If you're skiing on the East Coast and can't travel out west, it's pretty hard to beat Vermont. The Green Mountain State, it really lives up to its name. Unless it's winter, that is. Then it would be the White Mountain State. Anyway, with the wide variety of ski mountains spread all throughout the state, it would be hard to find the best ski resort in all of Vermont. So that's why I did that for you. I'll be ranking all of the biggest mountains in Vermont through a point system to find the best one. The mountains I'll be judging are Stowe, Stratton, Killington, Jay Peak, Sugarbush, Smuggler's Notch, and Mount Snow. Without further ado, let's get right into the first category. Altitude. The overall height of a mountain is pretty important, as that allows more trails, more snow, and more everything with more room. The ranking system for this category will be over 4,000 feet is a 10, over 3,800 feet is an 8, and over 3,600 feet is a 6. Our first mountain coming up with 4,395 feet is Stowe. They'll earn an easy 10 there. The next mountain, clocking in with 3,940 feet, is Stratton. That gives them a well-earned 8. Next up, we have Killington, the elevation totaling at 4,229 feet, another easy 10. Fourth, we have Jay Peak coming in at 3,858 feet, another 8 on the board. Next, we have Sugarbush, barely cutting it at 4,083 feet, a very close 10 there. Next, we have Smuggler's Notch, putting up 3,640 feet, not very tall compared to the rest of these. That'll give them a 6. Lastly, we have Mount Snow, the total elevation coming in at 3,600 flat, barely earning themselves a 6. Our next category is yearly snowfall. This might be one of, if not the most important category. Our rating system for this category will be over 300 inches gets 10 points, over 200 inches gets 8 points, over 150 inches gets 6 points, and over 100 inches gets 4 points. Our first mountain, Stowe, comes in with 206 inches of snow a year, on average. That'll be giving them a solid 8 points. Stratton, our next mountain, averages to 110 inches of snow a year. This is most likely due to them being in southern Vermont compared to Jay Peak or Smuggler's Notch further north. Anyway, they get a 4. Third, we have Killington, and surprisingly, even though it's the largest mountain in all of the East Coast, they only get 161 inches of snow a year. That'll give them 6 points. Next, we have Jay Peak, and although they might be a smaller mountain, they make up for it in snow. And boy do they make up for it, coming in at 322 inches a year. That earns them an easy 10, and a record on the East Coast. Next up, we have Sugarbush, coming in at 194 inches, just shy of 8 points. They'll be getting a 6 for that. Smuggler's Notch. Being up in the north with Vermont, it's hard to get not a ton of snow, and that's shown here, with 222 inches of snow a year. They'll be getting an 8 for this. Lastly, we have Mount Snow coming in at 127 inches on average. Not too good. They'll be getting a 4. Next category, lifts. This category is pretty straightforward. The more lifts they have, the more crowd control they have, and it's easier to get around everywhere. The rating system is pretty simple too. The amount of lifts they have divided by 2 is the amount of points they get. First up, we have Stowe. Stowe has 12 lifts, not including bunny hills or T-bars, and as we all know, 12 divided by 2 is 6, so Stowe earns a solid 6 points. See, I told you the rating was simple. Next up, we have Stratton. They have 11 lifts, but I think I have to take a point away because only a few of them are speed lifts. They total at 5 points. Killington. Killington, being a large mountain, must have a ton of lifts, so with their 20 lifts, they'll be earning an easy 10. Next, we have Jay Peak, coming up only at 9 lifts. They're going to have to get a 4 for this one. Sugarbush. Sugarbush is a pretty large resort, and their 16 lifts prove that. 8 points for them. Smuggler's Notch is a fairly small mountain, and when they only have 8 lifts to prove their size. 4 points for them. Lastly, we have Mount Snow. With their 16 lifts, they'll be earning an easy 8. The number of trails. It's a pretty basic category and a pretty basic ranking system. The mountain with the most trails gets 10 points, second gets 9, and so on. First up this time we have Killington with 149 trails. All throughout glades, parks, and other terrain, they'll be getting a 10 as they have the most trails. Next up we have Stowe with 116 trails all across the mountain, an easy 9 points for them. Very close behind Stowe, we have Sugarbush. All of their trails total at 111, 8 points for them. Just under 100 trails, we have Stratton with 99. That'll give them a 7. Behind Stratton, we have Mount Snow, clocking in with 86 trails, 6 points for them. Next up, we have Jay Peak with 81 trails. That'll give them 5 points. Lastly, we have Smuggler's Notch with only 78 trails. Not much you can expect from a small resort. 4 points for them. Trail diversity. This sort of ties in with trails, but it's also sort of its own thing. We will be ranking how diverse the terrain is on each mountain. The perfect ratio of trails is 20% beginner, 50% intermediate, and 30% expert. The closer it is to that, the more points it gets. First up, we have Stowe, with 16% of the trails being beginner, 55% intermediate, and 29% expert. This is almost identical to the perfect ratio, so Stowe gets a 9. Next we have Stratton. 40% beginner, 35% medium, 25% expert. If you can't tell from this, Stratton is a very beginner-friendly mountain. That's good, but bad for terrain diversity. They get a 5. Killington. 17, 40, 43. Better than Stratton, but not perfect. They get a 7. Next, we have J Peak. They have 20% easy, 40% intermediate, and 40% expert. I want to give them extra points for being so perfect, but I can't. Overall, pretty close to the goal. I'll give them an 8. Sugarbush. 20, 32, 38. Almost on par with Killington. I'll give them a 6. Next, we have Smuggler's Notch. 19, 50, 31. Basically perfect, only one trail off. I have to give them a 10. Lastly, we have Mount Snow. 16, 66, 18. Not very good compared to the others. They get a 4. Our last category to decide the winner is going to be ticket cost. This is probably one of the most important categories for obvious reasons. No one's going to ski a mountain if a day ticket is $500. I looked at a singular midweek day ticket on all these different mountains to get the same price. The ranking will be cheapest gets 10 points, second cheapest gets 9, and so on. Our first competitor, also our cheapest competitor, is going to be Smuggler's Notch, with a day pass only costing you $87. 10 points for them as it was the cheapest. Our next competitor fighting for first just fell behind with $89 for a day pass, and that's J Peak, 9 points for them. Next up we have Mount Snow with $116 for a lift ticket. We'll see them finally getting some decent points with 8. A normal day for Killington is going to cost you $123, 7 points for them. Right behind Killington we have Sugarbush offering $129 for a day ticket. They get 6 points. Stratton now with $159 for a lift ticket. Pretty expensive, a 5 for them. And finally, in last place, the most pricey of them all, Stowe. $161 for a lift ticket there. Pretty unlike them to be getting a 4. After adding up all the points, I can say sadly, Stratton is in last place with only 34 points. I honestly thought they would place higher, but oh well. In 6th place, we have Mount Snow with 36 points. I didn't expect much from them, and they didn't deliver much. In 5th place, we have Smuggler's Notch with 42 points. I didn't know much about them when I started this, but now I think they're a pretty cool mountain. For 4th and 3rd, we have a tie. Sugarbush and J Peak both have 44 points. The tiebreaker will be settled by the hotel cost. The White Horse Lodge, or Sugarbush's main lodge, is $154 for a weeknight and is rated 9.4 out of 10. Pretty good. J Peak Lodge, or their main hotel, is $322 on the same night and is rated 8.4 out of 10. A lot more expensive and rated worse. Sugarbush wins. J Peak is in 4th, Sugarbush in 3rd. In 2nd, with 48 points, is Stowe. With their massive footprint and a ton of trails, they earn 2nd place. In 1st place, with 50 points, is Killington. With 5 whole mountains of skiing area and beginner, intermediate, and expert terrain, they earn 1st place. Well, that pretty much wraps it up. I hope I informed you on some new mountains that you might not have known about already.